PSG's victory over Liverpool on penalties may have been decided by the lottery of spot kicks, but the tactical battle that preceded it was anything but random. Luis Enrique and Arne Slot took part in a high-level tactical battle, and Enrique did the seemingly impossible, coming out on top tactically against the Reds. Let's take a look at exactly how PSG managed to outmaneuver Slot's Liverpool machine. The opening phase of this match showcased Liverpool's aggressive 4-2-4 press in full effect, as they threatened to completely suffocate the Parisians. The pressing structure has been causing nightmares for opponents all season, and initially PSG were no exception. Liverpool's front three, joined by Szoboszlai from the midfield, created a first layer that looked impossible to penetrate at times, with all of PSG's back four consistently finding themselves under pressure. Time and again, they found themselves being forced backwards to Donnarumma, but the pressure wouldn't stop there, as a man could easily continue their press, keeping the centre-back in their cover shadow, so that there was still no outlet option. PSG were under the cosh, and consistently being forced long. But Enrique was, as always, in problem-solving mode. Initially, as we often saw, it was through Vitinha dropping in alongside Donnarumma during the goal kick, with the hope of not only having a quantitative advantage, but also a qualitative one, through having a man who's much more comfortable on the ball against pressure than either of the PSG centre-backs. The end result? Well, things were pretty much the same. Liverpool's front three at times were able to comfortably press the narrow men in the box, and still force PSG long, particularly because Donnarumma wasn't great in high-pressure situations at finding the fullbacks directly. Meaning what could have been a 5v3 or a 5v4 advantage to PSG did not transpire. As a result, PSG consistently faced turnovers. But the turning point came when Luis Enrique made a subtle but crucial adjustment. Vitinha returned to his midfield position from these deeper zones, entrusting his back four to begin the build-up. Initially, this wasn't too much of a concern for Liverpool, as they could still either operate with a dedicated man-to-man shape in the midfield, or the 4-2-4 which had given them so much success early on. But the difference now was Dembele was beginning to drop deeper and deeper, meaning Les Parisiens were now 4 versus 3 up in the midfield, as we often saw in the first leg, and this caused indecision in Liverpool's defensive shape. The centre-backs often were not backing up the press, meaning a Liverpool man higher up would have to choose between pressing a midfielder deep or the drop in Dembele. It was a tough choice, either let PSG have easy progression or allow the threat to roam between the lines. The perfect example of this, of course, came in the 12th minute. Liverpool were pressing high, this time ending up in a man-to-man situation rather than that 4-2-4. But Dembele is the spare man, dropping in as the false 9, with the centre-backs reluctant to press due to the runners beyond. As a result, Dembele turns and finds Barcola eventually, leading to the goal. But the ripple effect of this midfield dominance forced Liverpool to adapt their pressing approach. Szoboszlai, who had been aggressively pressing high with the front line, now had to consider his positioning more carefully, and began to start deeper. This was because Liverpool could not risk being completely overrun centrally, which meant that their press became more selective, and this is precisely what opened the floodgates for PSG. PSG's build-up success changed from being sporadic early on to masterful in the course of a few minutes midway through the first half. But the key was they were no longer building through the centre. Despite Szoboszlai being deeper now, with the Anfield crowd behind them, Liverpool wanted to keep up the pressure. This would be through a winger joining Jota in the press, and down the right it would be Mo Salah pressing Pacho. The goal was simple: press the centre-back while keeping Mendes in his cover shadow to prevent that outlet pass. It worked in fits and spurts, but Pacho's build-up play was masterful. Consistently, he kept calm under pressure, taking his first touch higher up the pitch, which had a double effect on the press. Firstly, it drew Salah in further towards him, but secondly, it changed the passing angle into Mendes, meaning that the left-back was no longer in Salah's cover shadow. The result? The Portuguese could be found with room to push up. And again, the Liverpool midfield was reluctant to cover due to the presence of Dembele. PSG's right flank told a similar story of tactical exploitation, with Szoboszlai deep once again to prevent the central overloads, Diaz was tasked with pressing from the left onto Marquinhos. But PSG were now a lot more composed under pressure. By finding the centre-back first, there was less dependency on Donnarumma's distribution skills, and it also ensured that the winger was fully drawn in onto the centre-back, meaning Hakimi was now much more easily found. This created a pressing dilemma for Robertson: push high up to pressure Hakimi and leave space in behind for Barcola to exploit, or hold the position and allow Hakimi time to progress the ball. The complexity of this decision was compounded by Dembele's false 9 positioning. When he dropped deep, it became impossible for a centre-back to commit to covering for Robertson if he had pressed aggressively, as Dembele would potentially immediately exploit that space. PSG, suffocated in the early minutes, were now beginning to progress up the pitch, and their positioning higher up the pitch revealed another layer of preemptive problem solving. Their shape morphed between various formations, sometimes utilizing a back three with a midfielder dropping in, and other times having Mendes functioning as the third centre-back, specifically positioned to neutralize Salah on the transition with their rest defense, while allowing his left winger to create an isolation against the right back. The structural flexibility made PSG incredibly difficult to counter as the match continued to progress. But their work with the ball caused similar problems to what we had seen deeper in their build-up, now with rotations playing a bigger role for PSG. The fluid interchanging of positions between attackers added yet another dimension to PSG's tactical approach. At times, Dembele would operate as the false 9 with Barcola wider, but then they would rotate. Kvaratskhelia also rotated between the flanks, creating constant identification problems for Liverpool's defenders. And Dembele's role was particularly effective in the final third. His ability to drop deep and receive was key, but it was only made possible through the movement of his teammates, be it the wingers or advancing midfielders. Their movements always ensured that Van Dijk and Konate were always hesitant to follow Dembele when he dropped deep, meaning that at times, even when the runners did not go beyond, Dembele could receive, turn, and play it out to the wingers in dangerous zones. And what's fascinating is despite all these sophisticated mechanisms, PSG did struggle to convert their tactical advantages into goals during regular time. They consistently reached dangerous positions, but lacked the clinical edge to make their dominance count on the scoreboard. But still, it was an incredibly impressive performance. But down in the comments below, do you think PSG are now genuine Champions League contenders? And if you're interested in learning tactical analysis to a high level, I have great news. My tactical analysis program is just about complete, and the waitlist for early access is still open for a few more days. It's everything I know about tactical analysis to take you from where you are now to a confident tactical analyst. Nothing is held back, so if you're interested, click the link in the pinned comment or the first line down in the description.